Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Smith, President of Universities UK, the organisation which has set up this critical debate this morning. It's very good to see so many of you here, and I hope you'll also contribute your views as we go along. I don't use the word critical lightly. The announcement of the independent review of higher education funding and student finance has marked the start of a process that has the potential to transform higher education in this country. Whatever the precise outcome of this funding review, everyone knows that no change is not an option for our universities. If we are to keep our place among the world leaders of higher education, we must invest in world-class people, in world-class infrastructure, and in a world-class experience for students. I'm convinced that the only way that investment can be achieved is if government commits to a sustained increase in public funding for our universities. Universities UK has made it clear that we will not preempt the outcome of the review at this stage by pronouncing on what we think the level of fees should be. We believe that a mixture of funding based on contributions from the student and direct from the state, together with income from universities' growing links with business, is the best way to preserve a strong and dynamic higher education sector. Our task over the coming months is to enable policymakers to make the right decisions for the sector, for students and for society, based on evidence that is robust and independent. We welcome the beginning of this debate because we know it will put higher education in the spotlight, and we believe the sector has a powerful and convincing story to tell about the returns it provides on the public investment that is made in universities. That story begins with the scale of the impact that universities have on the UK economy. Last month, Universities UK published a report that showed the sector to be bigger than the pharmaceutical and the aerospace industries. Universities create about 670,000 jobs in the economy and contribute about 5.3 billion to the gross export earnings of the UK. The return on the investment made by the Exchequer in the sector is outstanding. Not only do our graduates, on average, contribute 20% more to government coffers through taxes throughout their working life, but for every £1 million of university output, another 1.38 million is generated in other sectors of the economy. That is real value for money at a time when every penny counts. Part of the success story is due to the transformation of universities' relationships with business. Over the last 15 years, income from research grant and contract income grew by 170% in real terms. In 2007-8, it stood at 3.7 billion. For every 61 pence of public money invested in higher education, we lever in 39 pence of private and international funding. With 1% of the world's population, the UK produces 8% of publications, and we stand second only to the United States with 12% of citations, despite spending well under half of our GDP to that spent by the United States on its higher education system. All of that is testament to the real value that university research provides, and I'm particularly delighted to welcome representatives of the business community here today. But at the centre of our mission stands the student. Over 40% of young people now go into higher education, transforming not just themselves, but our society and indeed the way our universities are organised. Growing numbers of part-time and mature students, that is, those over 25, now form nearly 43% of the student body. This means that the student intake looks profoundly different from 20 or even 10 years ago. Universities have invested in world-class learning environments, buildings, technologies, and teachers, and the sector is committed to preserving the quality of degree qualifications via a robust, independent, quality assurance system that is the envy of the world. I am clear that, should tuition fees eventually rise, universities will have to respond with further improvements in the learning environment. But we do need to be aware of the dangers if funding for teaching fails to keep pace with the growing demands on university resources. We would then face the very real danger of being pushed back into an era of falling morale, of cuts in investment, and ultimately of being unable to keep pace with the demands of global economic competition. But let me end on a much more positive note. I mentioned at the beginning that this debate marks just the beginning of a process of change in debating university finance. I'm particularly delighted, therefore, that Mike Baker has agreed to act as our chair today and that we have such a diverse and knowledgeable panel and, I note, audience. The independent review panel will only be able to do its job effectively if everyone who cares about the future of higher education makes their voice heard. Let me also say that I'm very grateful to our own distinguished panel of presenters who will start off the debate with their contributions, and I hope, of course, all of you in the audience will take the chance to speak up today. It only remains for me to introduce our chair, Mike Baker, who will be well known to all of you, I'm sure, as former BBC education journalist and still a regular broadcaster and contributor to their website. We're delighted to have you here, Mike. Thank you for being our chair, and perhaps now I could ask you to introduce our panel of speakers.
Thank you very much, Steve.